Hey there, it's me, Severin7, and today I'm going to be going over the 7 cards I think are the coolest and most underrated cards from Edge of Eternities. I'm excited to share these with you, and there might be a few bonus ones in there, but 7's my shtick, so don't judge me. But anyway, let's get into those cards. All right, first up, we've got Tanuke Steadfast Second. Boy, do I think this card is just so sweet. I love creatures that give other creatures haste. I love anything that gives creatures haste because it just allows you to take advantage of so many wacky things that you can't normally do. And this card is just insane. It's a 4-mana 3/5, 2/2 red. It gives other creatures you control haste, and then it also says artifact cards and red creature cards in your hand have Warp 3. Now, Warp is a new mechanic that says you can cast it for its warp cost from your hand. It enters the battlefield. It doesn't do anything other than that, except in Tanuke's case, it will have haste, so you'll get to attack with it, but under normal circumstances, it doesn't have haste. But then it gets exiled, and you can cast it again at a later turn for its full mana cost. But what's sweet about Tanuke is he gives it haste, so all of the creatures you're warping in can attack right away. And this allows you to do some absolutely crazy things with things like Dracoseth, or Heart Gearhulk, or Dragonhawk, and there's just so many things that you can do with this. It's unfortunate that Portal to Phyrexia rotated out, because that's probably the most funny thing you could have done with this in Standard, but I mean, it's probably good that rotated out. But this card's really sweet, and I think that there are so many possibilities, and just every red card, every big splashy red card and big splashy artifact that gets printed for the next 3 years is going to make people want to try to break this card. So I think it's really cool. I think the warp mechanic is pretty sweet, and I'm really excited to play test this. I've got tons of ideas for it. Let's move on to the second card. Next up on my list, we have Lightstall Inquisitor. This is a 1-drop I was not expecting. It gives me hope that you might have like some kind of maybe Angel Tribal deck coming back to Standard eventually that's actually competitive, because this is a really solid 1-drop. It's a 1-mana 2/1 Angel Wizard with Vigilance. When this creature enters, each opponent exiles a card from their hand. They may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Each spell cast this way costs 1 more to cast, and each land played this way enters tapped. That is a super sweet ability. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it could slow your opponent down an entire turn by forcing them to exile a land from their hand that was going to come in untapped, and now it comes in tapped. That's huge. It can slow them down a whole turn, and sometimes 1 turn is all you need. That's the difference between being on the play and being on the draw. And it has Vigilance, so it can attack and block, so it's good against other aggressive decks because it can attack into their attackers, and then it can stick around to block their low toughness creatures, and it's just really solid. I think this card has a lot of potential, and I'm really excited to try it out with things like Aven Interrupter too, because we do have a decent amount of like exile stuff from their hand, and they can cast it later kind of stuff, and this paired with Aven Interrupter says that spells cast from exile cost 2 more to cast. Well, all of a sudden now this thing costs 3 more to cast, and you combine a few of those effects and you're putting your opponent in a position where you just keep tearing their hand apart, and they can't cast stuff till way later in the game. And I think it's just really sweet. There's so many fun cards you can pair up with this, and I'm really excited to try it. Let's move on to card number 3. Card number 3 is Pinnacle Emissary. This is another card I'm really excited to mess with. It's a 3-mana 1, a blue and a red for a 3/3 artifact robot, and it has Warp for a blue or red hybrid. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless drone artifact creature token with flying, but this creature token can only block creatures with flying. This is really sweet, especially because you can warp it in for 1 mana and then cast a couple of artifacts, get a bunch of rope flying robots, and then cast this again later for 3 mana. Not to mention that this triggers Synthesizer even if you warp it in. So there's just a lot of fun ways to abuse this. You can make a lot of little tokens. It fits right in with the Teamer Siege that gives creatures +1/+0 and haste. You can play this and then get a whole bunch of hasty, buffed up drone flying tokens. And I just think this card's really sweet. I think it's very underrated. I think people are really overlooking the potential for just crazy things you can do with this, especially in the later turns of the game. And I just think it's really awesome. So I'm really excited to try to find ways to break this. Let's get on to card number 4. At number 4, we have Servandum Sunstar Exemplar. This is a Orzhov 2-drop, 2 mana 2/2 with Vigilance and Menace. Whenever another creature you control dies or is put into exile, put a +1/+1 counter on Servandum and you gain 1 life. Now, this is not a 1 or more trigger. It's not once per turn, so this happens, you know, anytime any number of things die. You gain life, it grows, and then when it dies or is put into exile, if its power is 4 or greater, destroy up to 1 target non-land permanent. So this makes opponents casting things that exile or destroy it less good, because no matter how they remove it, it's still going to destroy something else on their battlefield if it's a control deck and they've got artifacts or planeswalkers or something like that on the battlefield when they destroy this. And it's really good. It has vigilance and menace, so it grows, it can attack, it has to be blocked by multiple things, and it can block too. So I think this card has just got so much going for it for 2 mana. I mean, that's a lot of really good abilities for that mana cost. And I can really see this making Orzhov Aristocrats just way over the top. And Sephiroth was already pushing that archetype into success, and then in a couple of cards I have another card that's going to help this archetype out as well. So I'm really excited to build some Orzhov Aristocrats. If I already have a list up in my most recent video, if you want to check out the 5 brews that I'm most excited for playing on day 1, I do have a list with Servandum in it. Although I think when I recorded the video I forgot to include Servandum, but it is in the list now. So with that, let's move on to card number 5. At card number 5, we have Timeline Color, which also sort of works within this Orzhov archetype. I mean, I think that we probably got more for the Orzhov Aristocrats, like sacrifice type style, than almost any other archetype in this set. This is a 2 mana black for a 2/2 haste, and you may cast this card from your graveyard using its warp ability, which means that you can pay 1 black and 2 life to get it out of your graveyard with haste. And then it comes back into exile and you can recast it for 2 mana on a later turn. So it just provides some really difficult to deal with recursive damage, gives you a nice sacrifice outlet, or not outlet, but a sacrifice target, because you can just keep recasting it from your graveyard. And things like Sephiroth and Blood Witch all help you gain life, so it kind of offsets that extra cost there. And it's just a really sweet card. There's nothing complicated about this, but I just think it's a really awesome card that might be flying under people's radar right now. And I think you're probably going to see a lot of this once the standard rotates and this set comes out. Let's go ahead and move on to number 6. At number 6, we have Icetail Explorer, which is a 4 mana 2/2 green for a 2/4 insect scout. You may play an additional land on each of your turns, and you may play lands from your graveyard. And then it has landfall whenever a land you control enters, mill a card. So it fuels itself. It lets you get more cards in your graveyard. It lets you get them out of the graveyard to recast them. You can cast multiple lands a turn, so you can just mill yourself and cast a mill and cast a mill, and just lots and lots of lands. This helps you ramp. This helps you trigger tons of landfall. There's so many ways to abuse this card. It's Crucible of Worlds plus like not a Souza Lost but Seeking, but you know, like Oracle of Moldiah on one card. And those cards cost like 7 mana combined, not to mention it fuels its own abilities by giving us mill every time we have a land, and it's a 2/4. So it's a really solid card. If you want to talk about some power crept abilities on a creature, this is definitely up there. So I think that there's a lot of super fun ways to abuse this, even if it's just like demolitioning fielding your opponents into oblivion, or you know, something like that. Just a ton of ways you can use this. And I have a landfall ping deck, and I was thinking about including this, but I wasn't 100% sure about using it in that particular deck, but I think I might have made a mistake in not including this in that deck. So we might end up playing this in our Jund landfall deck that we made in our video as well. So this is just a super awesome card. It's got a good body. It doesn't die to too many things, and I cannot wait to abuse these abilities. Let's move on to number 7. And at number 7, we have Umbral Collar Zealot. Now, this is just bar none one of the best sack outlets that we have had in a very long time. I think the last time we had one this good was Woe Strider way back, that made a goat, but it was 3 mana, and so you could sacrifice creatures to scry or surveil or something to that effect. But this is a 2 mana 3/2 that says you can sacrifice a creature and then surveil 1. So it's a free sack outlet. It's an unlimited sack outlet, and it lets you set up your draw. Make sure you're drawing something good. So if you have a lot of repeatable ways to sack things, you can just constantly make sure that you're triggering all of your void effects, triggering all of your sacrifice, death trigger pings, triggering this to surveil and make sure that your draws are really smooth. This is just a really premium sack outlet, like really, really good. And I can't believe we get something this awesome. And I know that a lot of you might be thinking that, we have Bartolome from Ixalan, and that's true. He's a decent sack outlet as well, and he can sacrifice creatures and artifacts as well. And he grows as he sacrifices those things. But he's Orzhov color, so that forces you into Orzhov or Abzan or Esper or something that plays black and white. As well as the fact that he does not surveil, which, one could argue, okay, well, that he grows, but he doesn't surveil. But I think the surveil is just so crucial and good. It's absolutely worth the fact that he does not grow as he sacrifices things. And plus, there are just a ton of creatures that do grow whenever you sacrifice stuff to go along with this. So we don't even really need Bartolome. And it's already a 3/2. So it's an aggressively costed 2-drop. Like that's a good stat line for what it does. And I think that it's just, I know people are looking at it, but I don't think people understand just how good this card is. And I'm just so stoked to have such a good sack outlet in standard, because it opens up the avenue to so many fun things. And I'm just really stoked about it. So with that, those are the 7 cards I'm most excited about. I've definitely got a couple of bonus cards, so we'll go over those really quickly to make it a proper top 10. I always, kind of jokingly make it a top 7 because, I'm 7, right? But 7's never enough. So let's get on to number 8. At number 8, we have Ouroboros. Now, this is such a cool card. And man, I had to read this probably 3 or 4 times before I understood how cool it was. It's a 4-mana 1/3. So yes, it is a little bit sketchy for a 4-drop power and toughness wise, but the ability is really good. So if you can play this in a place where you can keep it around and you're playing a relatively aggressive green deck or green black or green red deck or something like that, it's going to put counters at the beginning of your combat on everything, including itself. So every turn, it exponentially grows more and more. So the first turn this comes into play, it puts 1 counter on everything, including itself, making it a 2/4 for 4. And then the following turn, if you don't win the game, right there on the spot, now it's putting 2 counters on everything. So if they don't answer this very quickly, this gets super out of hand. Not to mention that if you can find any way to pump this thing's power before the first time it goes off, it's going to put bonus token counters on everything right away. So it's just a super cool card. I don't know if it's going to be competitive or not, but I think that this has definitely got some high potential in like a Gruul aggro or a mono green aggro as a top end card for a deck like that. So we'll have to see. And that's why it's one of my honorable mentions, because I'm not sold that it's going to be good, but I think it's a very fun card design and I think it has a lot of potential. Let's move on to my second honorable mention. Thrumming Hive Pool is my next honorable mention. I think this card is really cool because for 6 mana, it constantly makes creatures every single turn, and those creatures have haste and double strike. So, you resolve this in any kind of control or mid-range deck, and it just gives you constant pressure for free every turn until your opponent removes it. Now, I think it's important to note that you can build around this in a really sweet way with Leyline of Mutation. And Leyline of Mutation is a 4-mana Leyline that if you have it in your opening hand, it starts on the battlefield and you can choose a creature, and all creatures that you have on the battlefield, in your hand, in your deck, in the graveyard, and anywhere are the creature type of your choice. So you can make your entire deck into slivers, and then every sliver you play reduces the cost of this. Not to mention, this will now give all of your creatures that are now fake slivers double strike and haste. So there is some potential that if we can find a working variant of that deck, it does require 2 cards that basically do nothing on their own. Well, I wouldn't say this does nothing on its own, but it would go in a more aggressive shell almost. So it's kind of a risk to play an enchantment like that. But at the same time, if you resolve this, and even if you do resolve the Leyline later in the game, it immediately turns all of the creatures you already have on the battlefield into slivers and gives them double strike, which is pretty sweet. So I think that this is a really sweet like control or mid-range finisher, just as something that provides value every turn and forces the opponent to deal with it every turn. But I do think there is some potential for playing this in standard alongside Leyline of Mutation. So we'll have to see if something janky and kooky like that can work. I will most certainly be trying to make it work because I love slivers, and being able to turn things into slivers and have it matter in standard is like a dream for me. So keep your eyes out for something based around this card. Let's get on to the last card. My last card that I am excited about, my last honorable mention, is the the Dominion Bracelet. It is a 2-mana legendary artifact equipment. It gives the creature +1/+1 and gives it an ability that says pay 15 mana, exile the Dominion Bracelet. You control target opponent during their next turn. This ability costs X less to activate, where X is this creature's power. Activate only as sorcery, and it only costs 1 to equip. And it is really not that hard to get huge creatures. There's a lot of ways you can do this. You can play this in a synthesizer list where you're making huge, 7/7 to anywhere from like 6/6, 7/7s all the way up to like 12/12s and 13/13s. Just robots. Slap this on one of your robots, pay 2 or 3 mana, and take control of your opponent's next turn so that you can attack with all that stuff and force them to swing all their attackers into your gigantic robot blockers. Or you can play this alongside the new Devour Land guy, where you make sure that you're playing spelunking so that your lands come in untapped, and then you sacrifice all your lands to the Devour Land guy, get a whole bunch of new lands. He's like a 16 to 24 depending on whether you're casting him hard casting him for 8 mana, or you're casting him with non-creature ramp or things like that. But regardless, he gets huge, and then you just pay 1 mana to equip this and take your opponent's next turn, make sure they can't block, and then smash them in the face with the gigantic creature that you equip this to. So there are a lot of ways to get very big creatures onto the battlefield for not that much mana. Slap this onto them and snatch your opponent's turn for very cheap. So I think this has a lot of potential in standard to just be a really obnoxious card, and I think as a one-of in like a toolbox synthesizer list, taking advantage of Repurposing Bay, where they can just go fetch this out of their deck pretty easily and take your opponent's next turn, is really sweet. So there's a lot of potential here, and I think that this card will definitely, it's got to make waves somewhere. Like, it's just such a cool effect. So with that is all the cards that I am most excited about to play with. These are the cards that I think have the most potential that aren't as obvious. Like, obviously there are cards that are just really obviously good. Some of these cards might fit that bill, but to me, I don't see enough people talking about them. I'm in the Discords, I'm on Facebook, and I'm talking to people and having people tell me, those cards aren't that good. And maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not, completely correct, but I like to think that I've got a decent eye for things. And I think that these cards are better than they look, and will see play more than people think they will. I'd like to know how close my list is to yours. Let me know in the comments any cards that you think that I missed that should have been included in my list. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my choices. I'd love to hear from you. Also, if you want to chat with me directly and you want to, be a part of my community and, share decks with me, ideas, talk about cards with me, make sure you join the Sev Squad Discord in the link in the description. It does not require membership, but if you'd like to support me in that way, you can become a Sev Squad member, which will gain you access to exclusive channels in that Discord, as well as members only content and several other benefits. So make sure that if you'd like to support me that way, you click that join link down below, and I will catch you guys in the next one.